All right. Is Dhurandhar the movie a propaganda? A few months ago, I really didn't want to see this movie because I didn't have a good opinion about this. But a North Indian friend of mine kept pestering me that I have to see this movie because it's well shot and everything. So I went, I saw the movie, I liked it. Uh, and now it was released like 2, 3 days ago, and the whole of India is going crazy about this. So I thought, but something internally was questioning, why why did I not feel really motivated to go see this movie? So after coming back, by the way, I went through this director Aditya Dar's interviews, the music director's interviews. I really like the way that they have thought through everything, especially in terms of music, and what the director has gone through in his life. That all is still okay, but something still didn't really pushed me to go and watch this movie. So instead of going and watching this movie, I created this explanation of sorts as to what's an objective way to look at a movie. Because the moment we put it into this broad question of is Dhurandhar a propaganda? Either you can say it's yes. So the link I'll put it in the description below, but basically there are a bunch of people who are calling it as it's pure propaganda. These links you can click and watch these if you want to, right? So look at this. Under Desh hits a car, like these attacks are happening, AQI has gone up, unemployment all time high, yada yada yada, right? And then someone like Dhurandhar, he goes on to sell his AI course, saying instead of spending 500 rupees on the movie, spend on a course that I'm going to be creating and whatnot, right? And some people, or obviously people in the industry, are really raving about this, right? Like right from Rajmouli to Ram Gopal Verma to all the Telugu industry stalwarts. Um, they're all pretty happy with the movie, and so they're like, "Hey, it's just entertainment. Look at it that way." And there are some nuanced takes certain people have put up. People have started comparing it with Rang De Basanti, My Name is Khan, and whatnot. And this girl, she talked about one rapidly becomes propaganda and minds develops a cunning one did not previously have. Basically, all propaganda is lies, even when one is telling the truth. I don't think this matters so long as one knows what one is doing and why. So this is George Orwell's quote. So, I mean, though we know the director to some extent, his story and everything, what he's trying to say and why, and at this particular juncture in India with the current political landscape and everything, it's very too much information that's coming to a normal person like us, right? So we haven't invested in the movie. We don't have a macroeconomic policy level saying and all these things. So we can only look at it through certain lenses. So this is basically an exploration of how to look at this whole thing, right? So we saw the pure, yes, it's a propaganda clan, and no, it's not propaganda. Look at movie as a movie. It has completely changed the way of movie making in India. And someone in between could say these kind of words, but these are words. So like George Orwell said this, or some spiritual leaders said that. These are words, but is there a better way to look at this whole thing? This is where we have the systems point of view of looking at a movie through the lenses of macroeconomics, microeconomics, at community level, and at an individual level. Okay, that's what I'm going to take you guys through this. So, by the way, this link will be there so you can play around with all these things. What's the overall trailer views, the Twitter sensitivity analysis, what's happening on Instagram, short form pulse, and everything. There's just information, right? So let's come to the first perspective, which is macro. So the way I've designed this is country level impact of the movie. There is a studio level or at a micro level or at a business level impact. And then there is the larger community that we are part of. And community here is mostly from a space standpoint, right? Global community, India as a community, then within that regional communities, and probably linguistics also as a community, and the time that we are spending collectively in this particular work. An individual perspective is the core of everything that we do within the Internet of Value, our well-being protocol, and I'll try to explain all those things through this particular interaction. Okay, let's go into macro. So macro, there are three. So macroeconomics, in macroeconomics, whatever your position is on GDP, there is a clear mathematical way of this being calculated. So we're going to look at the expenditure account. Expenditure account is basically consumption. So household consumption. So we as individuals, we are buying tickets. We are buying, let's say, popcorns and Pepsis and whatnot while we are watching the movie. And then we are going to the theater, right? Like adjacent spend around it. So this is all consumption from individual standpoint. Then there is investment that is going into this. The investment is from the production companies, right? Geo Cinemas and Aditya Dhar and his brother's production studio. And G is government involvement or government expenditure. So this is very dicey. So you can look at it as what's the support that the government has to give to make sure that the concessions or the proceedings of the movie shootings are happening, facilitation of the movie, right? And export import in this case can be looked at in terms of export, overseas theatrical foreign rights and everything. And imports could be, let's say, you imported certain equipments or got certain CG company services and whatnot, right? So you look at all that. Overall, it comes up to 4,700 crore. Okay, there is a big assumption here, which is Dhurandhar 2 is going to make at least 1.5 times more money than Dhurandhar 1. But for you to understand what this means, you can also open up the full data ledger and you can understand it through each of the numbers that is being accounted for, right? And so I just talked about the expenditure account. There is also an income account of how GDP gets calculated, which essentially comes down to W's wages, the compensation for people who have acted in it, the technicians and whatnot. And then operating surplus is from a company level, right? Apart from the money that they have put in, what's the surplus that they have taken out? Operating surplus, and then mixed income, rent, finance. So there's typically a studio, and then they also get some finance at a certain interest level, right? And those guys are making money on the interest or financing side of things. And T minus S is the government involvement, which is taxation minus subsidies. Again, you go to full data ledger, you'll be able to see what it all means. And obviously you have AI right now to explain all these things for you. Then the velocity is interesting because it's really about, so the ticket money, or let's say the actor gets certain amount of money, the co-actors get certain amount of money. They go and spend it on, let's say, cars and groceries and whatnot. And that grocery person and the car dealer then spends it on something else. So the same amount of money is like moving different hands, right? So there is a circulation multiplier, which is, I'm assuming again, it's like 1.68. Like again, you can go back and see why we are using certain things. Assumptions are given here and everything. Okay. This is just to say a movie is not this one particular question of is it a propaganda or not. A movie has multiple perspectives, and we are looking at just the macro perspective right now. The second is a micro perspective. So we have looked at it from a country level. So India has a GDP increase of 4,700 plus crores because of the movie Dhurandhar, right? And at a micro level, now it comes down to the studios that are backing, right? So it's B62 and Geo. So the part one, what's the money that's made? Part one assumption, like I said, it's 1.5x of part one. And so that's a total combined gross. This is relatively straightforward to calculate. So what's the revenue that's coming in from theatrical, overseas, rights and stacks in terms of OTT, satellites, music, ancillaries, and everything. It's the revenue that's coming in. Cost would be production cost, P&A marketing, distribution logistics, talent premium overhead, and whatnot, right? So obviously revenue minus cost gives you profit ledger. Again, you can go into full data ledger and you can check out what are all the metrics that is going into these things, right? So these numbers can obviously go up and down based on the actual run of the movie. So we looked at an India perspective. We have looked at the studios that are involved, that particular perspective. The third one, this is where it gets kind of very interesting, at least for me, is what's happening at a collective level, right? If, let's say, X number of people have spent Y number of hours on creating this particular 7-hour movie for us, right? And so let's assume that it's 50,000 hours, okay? Direct production man hours is 50,000, but we as people have collectively spent, including the pre-release events, the interviews, the post-release celebrations and reviews and these kind of content where people are talking about it and whatnot. Let's say it's 15 million or 15.6 million hours that have gone into that, which means collectively the multiplication effect is 312 times. Now imagine this, right? So when a movie is being produced, for each 1 hour of effort that goes into creating this art form or a movie, 312 times more people are spending or the time that is being spent on consumption of the 1 hour of effort that's going into that. Mind-boggling. But obviously this doesn't happen for all the movies, right? Like most of the movies, people don't even know that it has come to the theater and whatnot. But now and then, these kind of things happen. Again, this is all assumptions, right? You can play around with it. So if you do some research and find that the total number of hours that has gone into creating this movie is less, then obviously, the factor is going to reduce and increase. This is purely from an attention level. Okay. The second one is a way more important thing, which is what's happening to us as a collective identity, right? This movie is creating certain amount of global identity in terms of the diasporas, festivals, cross-border recognition, or cross-border bans, right? From what I remember, Dhurandhar 1 was banned in the Middle East. So what is and obviously it must be banned in Pakistan as well, right? So what is the identity or the impact that this movie is having about India for the global audience, right? So you can play around with it to see, you can say, oh, my global identity would have increased because of this movie. So you can play around with it and see. National identity, right? Now, this, I'm assuming, has created this sense of, we are all together, we are Indians, the last dialogue, if I remember correctly, this is a new India, we will come into your house and kill you, right? And that kind of really stuck with me because is this the kind of impact that you want to leave your audience with? And now compare that with something like Hera or something like Rang De Basanti, right? Like that gives a more of an introspective thing of what are we doing? Can we change ourselves? Like, can we take responsibility for the kind of people that we elect and everything in terms of Rang De Basanti? In terms of Hey Ram as a movie, it's more about is shooting a person or killing a person the real way to kill an ideology? And then the main character Saket Ram, he kind of becomes a follower of Gandhi and Ahimsa, though he was trying to kill Gandhi, right? So it's a transformation of a person from a person who is oppressed by the system, the Hindu-Muslim riots that happens in Bengal, and because of that, he loses his wife, and then he becomes affected with PTSD, and then he goes on this route of trying to kill Gandhi, and he doesn't. Because his friend, who is from the Muslim community, played by Shah Rukh Khan, he kind of changes the heart of this Hindu extremist, which is Saket Ram, right? And then when he's about to go and be with Gandhi, Saket Ram, Gandhi is shot by the actual killer, who is, Godse. So it's a very nuanced, or those two movies I would rate higher than this movie, and the kind of taste it left in my psyche. Yeah, we'll get to the individual level later, but I'm just trying to say, this national identity is something, it's a very thin line between nationalism and fascism, right? So we have to see, but that line is, who knows who is drawing that line, right? So for me, it could be nationalistic. For you, it could be extremism, or it could be fascism, right? So that's why these are very tricky things. So people who are creating these mass consumption products has to think a little deeper about what is it that they're putting into the world. For someone who quotes Bhagavad Gita in the beginning of the movie, it's also important to think about the karma yoga perspective of, are you completely in aligned with whatever you're trying to say? Anyway, I still haven't seen the second part. There's this a rant from my end. That's at the national level. Then there is a state and identity thing that's happening, right? So, which is kind of like, South Indian film industries, like Kannada film industry gave KGF 1 to Kantara, then Telugu film industry gave Bahubali 1 to RRR, and now Varanasi, and the whole Bollywood movie industry was like, man, what are we doing, right? And even Tamil industry and Kerala industry are kind of feeling the heat, right? So it kind of creates, purely from a competition standpoint, it's a good thing. You're trying to, one up each other. And I'm assuming that the filmmaking from whatever Rajamouli and RGV has talked about, it like completely flips the way that heroes are represented. Like, it's not some godly hero. He is flawed. Like, he gets beaten, he bleeds, and whatnot, right? So, is this gonna affect the way that, let's say, a North Indian is gonna be perceived in South India, or the vice versa? That is something to be thought about in terms of state and regional identity perspective. Then the language identity is similar to this, because in India, state and regional identity is very tied to language as well, right? Yeah. So this is all at a identity level. Then the signal is, what's the conversations that we are having around it. Even this is, I had to think so much about putting such content out, because if people are talking about it's a propaganda, it's not, and then like this multi-perspective way of looking at this whole thing, and is it worthwhile to spend 4 days of my time to create something like this, create videos around this, and put it out? I don't know, but I think it's now it's put into public psyche, right? Is it how strongly the movie supports shared identity and continuity? We are a pluralistic society, so we have to be a little careful about all these things. There's no question that this has amplified the signal, right? The community transforms a static media file. So really think about it. It's a 4-hour MP4 file, right? Like a video file, and that's going into all the status and everything. And that's becoming a living cultural artifact through cumulative attention. And the same thing can happen to movies, the same thing can happen to a meme, same thing can happen to a tweet and whatnot, right? So just saying, these are all multiple perspectives to look at it from a community standpoint. What is kind of missing here is another way to look at community is skill-based communities, right? So if you are a filmmaker, if you are an editor and you're watching Dhurandhar, then you're like, man, I have to cut my movies like this, right? Or if you're a color corrector, or like a lighting person, or a screenplay writer, storyteller. For you, this could become like a whatever money that is, let's say 250 crore lesson that you're getting for 500 rupees or 1000 rupees or 200 rupees that you're paid, right? So you can improve your skills, and if you're part of skill communities, which is kind of how the movie industry operates, you're part of a labor union and whatnot, right? You can get better at your skill by looking at this as well. So there are all different perspectives around just communities. As a community, it's not just a collection of people. If you go one level deeper, is it a collection of people around the language, around the nationality, around space, right? Or around skill? Like these are all the different perspectives to look at from a community standpoint. All right. Now, the most important thing is what is this all doing to one person at an individual level? So, we have something called the well-being identity. So, an individual's representation has to be optimized for something, and that optimization has to be around the well-being of the person, is what our whole hypothesis is. Then what are the different factors that goes into such well-being and well-becoming, or physiology, emotions, feelings, thoughts, habits, performance? These are the 6 nodes. Within physiology, you would have activity, rest, diet, and breath work. So you can then go ahead and think from your experience about this particular movie. When you were watching the movie or immediately after the movie, did your breathing deepen or become shallow and restricted? You can say if you become anxious, so you can see your well-being score or the aura level, increasing and reducing. Similarly, were you in a fight or flight mode, right? Did you feel physically heavy, ready for a vital movement? Which means, sometimes you watch movies like this and you want to just like go and punch someone kind of a thing, which may be a good thing if you're able to regulate it, may be a bad thing if that increases your cortisol levels. But something to think about at what's happening at a physiological level. Actually, one other way to look at it would also be the senses, right? So is it like too loud? What's happening to your eardrum? So if it's too bright, what's happening to your eyesight? All those things can be thought as well. Emotional data. Emotions are the neurochemical state of your body. So it's like, if your baseline level of adrenaline, dopamine, cortisol, GABA, all these regulators are at a certain state, what is this movie doing to you, right? What's happening in terms of joy, your safety, your social connection. So it's all very individualistic, right? So if you are coming from a minority community such as a Christian or a Muslim community, do you feel connected or do you feel isolated? Do you feel threatened or you feel secure, right? And in terms of joy, like, do you feel, yeah, man, you're coming out like really pumping, or you're feeling drained out? So the emotional state, instead of saying neurochemical states, you would be using the felt experience of it, right? So you would say, instead of saying, I saw a girl and my adrenaline shot up, my dopamine shot up, you'd say, I think I like this girl, right? So the cognitive term that you're giving to the neurochemical state of your body is feeling. So here again, you can go and see like what has happened to your subjective horizon, right? Do you see the possibility expand or shrink? Your visceral inspiration, as in like, do you feel a resonance in your chest or gut, right? Like, how do you feel about it? So you can play around with it. This is all very subjective. The questions can change. If you're way more interested, go check out the incident of value and the protocol behind it. And the questions can be much more nuanced as well. Next comes, so now you have seen what's happening at a physiological level, what's happening inside at a neurochemical level. But all this are like essentially going to head, and like the processing center is like really trying to put through or process or compute what's happening, and not just what you're perceived and what's happening in your body, but how you're in alignment with, let's say, the larger consciousness, right? So let's say in this case, you can think about it from like mental models that you have about a movie. For example, before you started watching this video, maybe you didn't have the mental model to think about a movie in such different perspectives. And now you have it. Now, are you going to incorporate that into your existing mental model system? Or you're going to discard it as some random guy talking about it on the internet who's not liking this movie and whatnot, right? But generally, you have certain mental models about how the world works, and you have certain biases. How aware are you about your biases and whatnot is essentially what we try to, capture at the thought level. So here I said, did the film clarify or confuse your mental structures, right? So we come out, like after seeing the first movie, I was a little confused as to like, man, is this, like, why did people call it a propaganda movie? I saw like a couple of scenes where it felt like, I wasn't in alignment with my mental state. I came out a little confused. Logical clarity is the why behind the experience clear to you. Again, so you can play around it and see if it's foggy or it's loose. Like if you clearly why you wanted to go and that kind of got satisfied or not. That's all at thought level. Next is habit. Right. Habit is exciting how to look at it because let's say your default pattern is certain people are acting in a movie and you go and see it. For example, Tom Cruise acts in a movie and then you'll go and see it. Or The Rock and Kevin Hart are in a movie and you'll go and see it. Right? So you're used to certain habits, and are you going to be, your autopilot is kind of reinstated. For example, in this case, if there is an Aditya Dhar movie from now on, are you going to go and see all his movies or at least the next movie without really thinking about it? If you see his name. And same with the lead actor as well. So you can play around with it and see, right? Has your ability to choose the next action shifted? So let's say, even for me at a personal level, after watching the first movie, did I become intentional about how I watch movies? Yes. So maybe it created something good in me in terms of me going back and looking at my own thought loop and habits as well. This is another good thing about understanding all this, is because you can change anything. This is the whole thought alchemy, emotional alchemy and whatnot, right? You can take something and you can like kind of convert it into a way that kind of serves you. Okay, so that's at a habit level. You can also go into a little more relatable ways in terms of, let's say you were off sweet and cigarettes for a while, but then you went to the theater and then you were in that particular zone and you kind of got into having a bunch of Pepsis and cigarettes, right? So maybe it reinstated a negative valence habit. So we don't know. So you can really play around with the questions over here, right? What the protocol really gives is these physiology, emotions, feelings, thoughts, habits, performance as a mental model for you to really think through what's happening to you at an individual level. Okay, perform is the money side of things, but so like I said, like if you are someone who is trying to get into movies, or if you're someone who is trying to create storytelling for your startup or for in general, storytelling is a good skill to have, right? So this whole presentation of the website itself is probably a learning in terms of aesthetics and how you want to showcase certain stories to the world, right? So did you learn something from there and whatnot, right? Okay, now the most important part is you're trying to look at the real money that you're put into this movie and the time that you're put into this movie. You as an individual, right? I'm assuming you're not part of the movie industry and you're just a consumer like me. So you can set your monthly salary, for example, whatever. Select the cost, how much you have spent on these things, your travel, your snacks, condiments, your ticket cost. I'm assuming it will be more. parking. So this is all like cash, like real money that's going in. And then there is a time stake. What was a commute time? The movie run time was like almost 7 hours, right? Like both put together. By the way, this whole project is everything about both the movies put together. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's say 7 hours run time, right? Now, let's say you watched few videos, you got into discussions and whatnot. So this is all the money and the time that you put into this. And this time multiplied by your per hour rate would be the opportunity cost as well, right? All right. Are you ready to see the final result? Dhurandhar's impact on an individual, like the current individual was me. Though at an Indian economy level, it has created 4,700 plus crores of GDP movement. From a studio ecosystem level, this much. At a social identity level, high impact, but at an individual level, my well-being score has dropped. The baseline that we started with was 700, and the real value that I've lost is close to 5,000. That is not a good thing for me if I was that person. Now, like I said, you can play around with it. This is completely an educational way to look at one movie, a systems perspective of looking at a movie through macroeconomics, microeconomics, community economics, and probably behavioral economics as well. Now, for you to be attuned with what's happening here, you can go to About. You can see the white paper behind this particular project, the FAQs, if you have any questions, the debate that, I had with different economists, different designers to create this particular project. The white paper would give you a lot more detail about what's going at the individual layer, the micro level, the macro level, the community layer, and everything. And yeah, that pretty much summarizes what we have done. Now, this is a systems POV of a movie. So if someone asks, like, is Dhurandhar a propaganda? You would ideally want to get into a nuanced conversation with them, depending on whether you want to get into that or not. But I hope you learned something out of this and a way for you to look at movie through multiple lenses. And if I'm missing something, there could be biases in the way that I look at this whole project. So yeah, please reach out to me if you have alternate thoughts around this. In general, I would like to know what you guys think about this multi-perspective view of looking at a movie. Thanks a lot for your time. See you in the next video.